Ritesh and Sudha, it's a pleasure to have you both on this webcast today. I'm really excited, to speak to the two of you in the next few minutes, especially to understand and explore this whole changing dynamics of the customer experience industry. Most importantly, how Firstsource is sort of riding this wave of transformation and all the changes that are happening in the background. So, previously, just about this quarter, we actually, and on our ISG index call, we spoke a lot about BPO as an industry. And one of the key things that we observe is that this industry is sort of in a reset mode. There's a rapid shift sort of happening. A lot of reset is sort of happening in this industry. AI, first of all, needless to say, it is kind of changing the nature of the contracts and the nature of the engagements. Technology is at the epicenter of everything right now, which is unheard of, right? BPO was all about process at one point. It's kind of also blurring the lines between IT and BPO in terms of how we approach each one of these deals. And somewhere the industry and the domain knowledge is also becoming like the foundational blocks of how tech in general comes alive. If that's not there, at the end of the day, it's not sort of coming alive. So with all of these changes sort of happening, Ritesh, I think you announced a very bold, visionary statement that you've actually come up with from a strategy standpoint, which is the un-BPO strategy. We're just keen to understand how is this strategy sort of unfolding for you all as at Firstsource with your clients, and most importantly, what led you to sort of come up with this whole strategy?
So, Namratha, firstly, thank you for having us on this webcast. I'll go back in time to what was an innovator's dilemma moment, maybe about 25 years back. And that was the onset of labor arbitrage. So 25 years ago, at right about the time when Y2K was coming into place and everybody were looking to remediate their systems, getting work done cheaper, faster, better was the name of the game. And that innovator's dilemma moment created a whole slew of new companies who prided themselves on offshore. And they replaced what were the traditional outsourcers. It's not like the traditional outsourcers went away, but a lot of them actually did not respond quickly enough. And I think what we are in right now is in the throes of another innovator's dilemma moment itself. And I think a lot of it got accelerated through a number of shifts coming together. First and foremost, the macro environment has shifted in a fairly meaningful way. For the last 15 years, since the 2008 financial crisis or thereabouts, we were in a low interest rate environment, and that changed. With the Fed raising interest rates, and of course now they're trying to pull back some of that. But the big 800, the big moment that really played out was in November of 2022 when OpenAI launched ChatGPT. And that in some sense was a seminal shift in the way work could potentially get done itself. Now, of course, you can see that even from then to now, that moment seems like a moment in AI history, given the pace of change that's played out. But the other piece that also went along with this is the anthropological shift. We now have 5 generations of people in the workforce. Now, when you combine all these shifts together, we are in the throes of another innovator's dilemma moment. And I think typically when you run into an innovator's dilemma, you end up having two kinds of responses from companies. More often than not, large incumbents struggle to respond and adapt, and they're not as quick to take advantage of what's playing out. And that gives rise to a new set of startups, fast-moving players, as well as challenger brands who are able to adapt at scale. I think from our vantage point, we felt that this was an opportunity for us to take advantage of the different elements that we had built in our business, the assets that we had in our portfolio, and essentially buck the trend and be one of those who could be one of those challenger brands who could occupy the vacuum that or the space that would be left in this to try and not just gain market share, but grow at a much faster pace than the rest of the industry itself. Now, what were those elements? Now, in a sense, there were 4 key foundational blocks. And one of them you called out was deep domain. Our view was that it was essential to actually be an inch wide and a mile deep, to not be everything to everybody, but pick your swim lanes and in that be very deep from a domain standpoint. But secondly, also use technology to which is contextualized to the domain. So it's not a one size fits all, but it's a horses for courses kind of a play. And then third is being able to deliver to business outcomes. End of the day, if you're able to align yourself to client business objectives, both of us are essentially aiming for the same North Star. And that was something that we felt was critical. And the fourth was being able to do all of this, um, you know, really quickly, almost, pardon my French, in a get shit done kind of mode, what we now call as enterprise scrappy. But if you bring all these four elements together, they essentially were the foundational elements of what we felt was un-BPO. That's what caused us to say, look, this is a golden opportunity to rewrite the rules of the game. It's not often you get a chance to change the way an industry works and rewrite the future of work itself. And this is something that caused us to launch unbpo. We were already demonstrating a lot of the elements of unbpo in the way we worked, and we felt this would only get accelerated as we go along itself. And one of the things you alluded to, frankly, with this that's playing out already is the traditional boundaries between IT and BPO are blurring, but also the traditional boundaries between software and services are blurring. You know, traditional services companies have basically built a business based on predicated on labor. You add add people to the headcount, and that's a lead indicator of whether there's revenue growth or not. It's a very linear business model. At the same time, SaaS businesses have sold on the basis of number of seats per month or some other such metric, irrespective of whether those features or functionalities are required or not required. And I think the world we are moving into is more and more productized services, uh, truly a service as a software kind of a mode. And I think that's one of the things that we felt we could potentially lead the charge on. The second thing that's also playing out with the advent of technology, location is no longer a factor in some sense, right? In the past, companies prided themselves on being in 80 countries, 100 countries, and saying that this is how we can service different languages. Now, with the environment that we are in, where technology has advanced so much that you can do real time language translation with minimal latency and still be able to improve customer experience, location dispersion is probably one of those additional pieces of debt that clients would or companies would have on their balance sheet itself. And these are some of the changes that I think are coming into play. I think the third element of it is also the piece of not trying to do it all ourselves, but relying on a partner ecosystem, particularly in a fast changing technology environment. My message often is tech first, partner first, and try and experiment strategically so that you can take advantages of the changes in the landscape and incorporate the partner solutions into what you're able to do itself. So if we can be the orchestrator, trying to bring it all together to deliver a business outcome, I think there's a tremendous amount of value. So in some sense, it's all of these elements that uh, we were already manifesting in the ways of working, which we tried to put under the unbpo framework. And uh, it's been received very well with customers and prospects. I think people have been very positive in terms of what it means for them. I think they're also recognizing the fact that this is something that a lot of them recognized, but it required somebody to call it out and say, hey, this could be the way the world could evolve. What I've also seen is that unbpo is also providing them in some sense a playbook for how they could redesign their own industries, because a lot of the elements of unbpo apply not just to the bpo space, but they have a broader relationship to any industry sector itself. So it's become a boardroom conversation. It's something that we're able to talk with C-level execs and say, this is how you can apply some of the tenets around of unbpo into their operating environment itself.
Fantastic. I think the very fact that you go all the way back to 2008 and all the different disruptions that we have seen, I think the beauty of this industry is it has still been able to sort of continuously evolve and evolve with changing times. And it's interesting to see how this whole unBPO has sort of unfolded. Clearly we see how well thought through those tenets to come up with is very comprehensive. And I'd like to congratulate you and your entire team, and what actually led us at ISG to also rank you as leaders in the customer experience quadrants, the provider lens, is one of these tenets which actually drove us to say how visionary this whole strategy is. Speaking of it, the tech angle that you actually brought, which is one of your key tenets. And Sudha, I think you've been talking to the clients as well on a day-to-day basis in terms of how can they sort of embark on this whole journey of AI. We did a research and we kind of saw that our data indicates that people are spending a lot of time and effort on POCs, and there is a lot of speculation in terms of is it really scaling or is it still stuck at POCs, and when will the whole POC bubble sort of burst, and then organizations are truly sort of moving into large scale productions. But in terms of AI, what are you sort of seeing with your clients, and when you take this tenet to your clients, and what is your advice been in terms of how they can leverage Firstsource to be able to move from POC to production?
Okay. Thank you once again, Namratha, for having us. And to what Ritesh was saying, right? So AI in customer experience has definitely moved from, say, an experimentation to an expectation stage, which everyone is clear, right? They do understand that it's no longer about if this AI is going to work, but where does it actually come in and create that structural advantage? And which are those pockets where, to the point that you said, where it is no more about a POC, but then, trying to scale it across, right? So based on the numerous conversations that, for our existing clients or for our, potential clients as well that we've been having, what's unfolding is definitely one part, which is, they would like to understand how can they shift from more of an isolated tool perspective to bringing in AI across, the customer journey, right? From looking at self-service to maybe an agent enablement to even real-time decision making. And yes, when you get to the real-time decision making, mostly from an agentic perspective, there are pockets which are on POC stage. But then if you look at the other side, right, from your self-service to agent enablement, and you must have as well experienced this as an end customer while you're interacting with maybe an airline or maybe an hotel or any even maybe your telco as well, right? Where you're seeing a lot of things which is getting into your app or into your website or maybe even a conversation idea, right? So those are pockets where they are not looking at POC, but certain completely, bringing in that journey orchestration layer from an agentic perspective. Yes, there are some POCs which are there. But what we've also been seeing, to what Ritesh was also alluding to, is where, you're looking at most of the winners are those who are treating AI as a operating model and not just like a fancy tech add-on, right? So what probably in 2010 or 11 was something like a speech analytics was considered a fancy tool to have because it's giving insights, right? But now that's becoming table stakes. That's there literally everywhere, right? Any kind of even a basic CCAS has some kind of voice analytics which comes in with the insights report. So, what I've seen personally is looking at four main use cases which have gone beyond the POC stage and which are, all at scale today are, I would say, agent assist or a co-pilot kind of solution, which is offering, real-time guidance, your summarization, what should be the next best action and so on, maybe a cross-sell or an upsell within that layer, right? And the second is conversational IVR, where you're looking at more intelligent self-serve, intent orchestration layers, and looking at deflection, which is more going even to a transactor and a decision maker, right? And then the traditional quality automation as well. But now that traditional quality automation is moving towards 100% interaction coverage, which is replacing all kinds of sampling, which is also looking at complex use cases, not just soft skills, not just, questions where did the agent, was the agent nice enough? Was the agent, did the agent talk with respect? Or, was this compliance done or not, right? But it's going beyond, looking at even desktop automation, looking at, the entire quality angle across the channels and across the customer journey, right? And why these work? I would say it's because it sits inside the flow of work and not alongside it. Right? So that way, you're able to tie this to the ROI from a CX economics perspective, and you're not looking at vanity metrics like handle time or just a deflection or what is my self-serve rate or my containment, right? You're going beyond to say that, AI has kind of taken some ownership here. It has redesigned my process and my customer journey. It's also enabled a behavioral change with how our internal agents also, are interacting with their end customers. So it's beyond the model accuracy as well, right? So that way, it's no longer about AI and CX, about intelligence, but it's about bringing in intentionality. And how do you kind of move beyond just experiments to kind of scaling it to outcomes? And that's one of the tenets which Ritesh also spoke about, right?
Yeah, just when I thought that this whole chatbot era was not going to mature
Yeah.
anymore, I'm so glad that now there is more intelligent conversations that we can actually have with chatbot, and it's kind of a
Absolutely.
revival. It's in a revival mode, I would say, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking, I mean, technology, like I just said, I think it can come alive only when there is enough domain expertise and industry
Yeah.
expertise as a data that has been fed and trained to sort of come, right? But that domain expertise and industry expertise is becoming so much more important, because conversations with your clients, Pritesh, I think it goes back to, it's not just about labor arbitrage, lift and shift a process and then we are done, but it's about going much deeper and trying to sort of align with the outcomes. So you spoke about inch wide and a mile deep. It's a very interesting strategy. So can you kind of elaborate in terms of what you're doing to sort of enable the whole domain and the industry expertise?
Yeah. So Firstsource as a business is done really well in regulated markets, right? And we've focused a lot of our energy in five key verticals: financial services, healthcare, telecom, media and tech, retail, and the utilities sector itself. A lot of them require a very deep understanding of the business domain itself. And it's not just good enough to be at the 30,000, 40,000 foot level, but you need to have people who understand the process really, really well. And that's something that I think we've been able to build over a period in time within our associates, etc., subject matter experts in the space. Now, what that allows us to do is to bring real solutions to challenges that they might be facing, as opposed to just talking about the cursory application of a technology itself. And I think that's what our view is, that it's going to be foundational, as you alluded to as well, right at the outset, um, to ensure that you can actually make some of these use cases come to life and deliver true business benefits itself, because otherwise a lot of the stuff will be left to chance. And that's one of the things I think that we're able to demonstrate, is how a specific business problem can be addressed. And maybe, Sudha, you can talk about a couple of examples in some of these verticals that we've been able to bring to life.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Ritesh. So, to what Ritesh said, one of them, let's take mortgage, for example, right? So we've kind of built out a mortgage LLM, which is very specific to that domain, right? And that you can basically plug in to any kind of copilot that is there today, right? Or it can even be used for a conversational IVR or a chatbot, because it's going to be picking out the domain specific requirements and then pass it on. Similar in the healthcare space as well. Okay, I would like to take like maybe a very basic example. Let's look at repeat contact, which, irrespective of the type of industry, that is a big problem here, right? And where you want to look at how do you reduce this repeat contact, how do you kind of not only look at it from a metric perspective, but how do you enhance that journey for a customer so they don't have to call us multiple times. And there could be n number of reasons. But what if we had, SLMs which are built across all of these domains, and which at an intent and at a sub-intent level is able to predict that these are reasons as to why this, can come up, right? And that can potentially lead to a repeat contact. So you want to kind of remove that. So what we do is we have these internal models which we feed into now, thanks, to all the tech that is there, that most of them are becoming open platforms where you can bring in your own model and you can plug it in and then play it. So what happens that way is that you're able to accelerate that deployment cycle because you know the domain. We are listening to the calls. We know what those intents are. We know the struggles of the agents. We know the struggles of the customer. So you're kind of tying those two together, and you're building out these flexible operating models within the tech landscape, which is also controllable, which is measurable, and you can change as you go because you're learning and the model keeps updating. So what happens in that way is that you're also kind of, putting your skin in the game, which most clients are extremely reciprocative of, because they understand that, you're not just saying that this is a pure FT based kind of an approach, but you're bringing in, your domain expertise over here, and you're willing to put in that skin in the game. So they are getting a quality uplift, and they are moving beyond just a cost to serve, but then looking at more an outcome kind of a model, right? So that way, I would say it's about flexible operating models, bringing in the human and the AI collaboration. Where does the handoff happen? Where should be clearly defined within us, and where does, a human in the loop come in, right? So that way you're kind of offering a higher agility and obviously a better experience both for our employees and also for the customers as well.
I'd like to just add to what Sudha
Go
said,
ahead.
Namrata. So just take a couple of examples. One she talked about on the mortgage side. One example of where this is coming in handy already in conversations with customers is the work that we've done around improving underwriter processing efficiency itself. Now, with the Fed starting to roll back interest rates, etc., a lot of the mortgage originators have basically built a very lean business, and one of the challenges in this is getting good underwriting talent itself. Now, if if you take a lot of the steps that go in the entire process of underwriting itself, there's a lot of repetitive work that is there, whether it's related to income verification, asset verification, collateral, so on and so forth. A lot of that can actually be agentified or can be automated in a meaningful way. And then you still have an underwriter who's the human in the loop, who's reviewing and approving. But what you're able to do with that is potentially get a 1.5 to 2x improvement in the processing efficiency and be able to scale up in a non-linear fashion. Now, these are the kinds of benefits which are significant because on one hand, it obviously reduces the cost of operations, but on the other hand, it's also a revenue generation opportunity because that same originator can process many more loans than they otherwise could have. So that's one example. But take another part, which is in our collections business, which is really a horizontal cutting across all our industry verticals, whether it's financial services, healthcare, telecom, utilities, and retail. Um, when we go to a bank today and we are collecting money on behalf of a bank, we are able to do this in a hyper personalized fashion using AI and ML to be able to reach people at the right time, at the right frequency, with the right kind of personalization, so that the propensity to pay, which is the metric that the bank or the financial institution or the fintech is tracking as an example, goes up. And these are elements which now today you're able to do, as opposed to a traditional collector who's probably sitting in a contact center picking up the phone trying to reach out to collect a debt itself. Now if you're able to do this using technology and improve the propensity to pay, that's money in the bank for the financial institution, as an example itself. So these are cases where we are able to deploy this in a real life scenario and be able to see significant outcomes.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely, and those are interesting use cases. Also, bringing in an important factor that the skill set shift is real, right? It is happening, and all the strategy that we've spoken about the domain expertise. We've certainly spoken about the tech, but at the end of the day, how are people warming up to it? I think that's another important element, and it won't be complete without that, right? So from a skill set standpoint, as far as people is concerned, I'll break this into two. One is internally, as far as your organization, and how are you sort of enabling your employees to sort of warm up to this whole skill shift that is sort of happening. And of course, bringing in AI in their day-to-day job also, to kind of say, how do I coexist with my partner that is AI? That is one aspect. And to your clients as well, how are you sort of enabling them with this? One is, you have your employees, then there is also gig workers sort of coming into the picture. Now they have also the agents to adopt. So the whole human in the loop aspect plus the bot aspect, there are multiple things that even the client has to sort of consume. Earlier it was just one element, and that was human element, and now there are too many aspects to this operating model. So how do you see that internal shift, and how do you see that external shift happening?
So a lot of this is around designing what we believe will be the future of work, guiding principles itself, right? The first step in that often is orchestrating the workflow itself. And what do I mean by that? Breaking the process into a set of atomic level tasks. Unless we are very clear about what those tasks are, determining which of those tasks can be done by humans, whether it's full-time employees or gig workers, and which of those need to be done by AI agents, becomes very hard to distill out. And so that's one of the first foundational steps that needs to happen, right? And we've done a lot of work with our existing clients on their processes to be ready for that. Now, not every customer is ready for that conversation today, but it's critical from our standpoint to be able to table and say, here's where we think the puck is going. The
Right.
second part of it is the workforce redesign piece. And a lot of this is centered around saying, so if you know what the process is going to look like once it's broken into atomic level tasks, uh, who does what, right? And what should the org structure of the future look like? I mean, if you think about the pyramid structure, the traditional hierarchical model that we've had, that's a relic of the industrial revolution. We've never challenged why that has existed all along. And I think what AI is now bringing is shifting the org structure as well. And I think we are going to get into uh, org design models which are fundamentally different than the pyramid model of the past. Now, it's not that these things are happening overnight, but if you don't think of workforce redesign in this context, um, being able to determine how the human should interplay with AI becomes a lot harder, because there is going to be role redesign. I mean, Sudha talked about, take QA as an example. The the traditional person who's doing QA, if that role is going to get largely automated, the person who's probably now reviewing QA may have the may have the task as a human in the loop to review the content of what an AI agent is producing, and that's it. And there may not be anything more. The good part with agentic AI in some sense is it allows you to introduce as many steps in the process where you can insert a human in the loop depending upon your degree of risk aversion and the degree of cost benefits or business benefits you want to realize itself. So workforce redesign is going to be a foundational factor also in this. Now, in the context of that, we are doing a few different things, right? We are implementing right now as we speak a skills taxonomy platform itself, which allows us to plan for a future model which encompasses um, different dimensions or different archetypes of personas that might exist, whether it's a full-time employee, whether it's a gig worker, whether it's an AI agent, and then apply the roles to what each of these folks might do. Now, the skills taxonomy platform allows individuals to outline not just the domain skills that they have, but also the soft skills, so that we can start seeing where can these folks can be utilized in a meaningful way, and what additional skills do they need to build. So there's almost like a skills navigator which creates an individualized learning pathway. Now, we think that a lot of these are new concepts that haven't necessarily been implemented or operationalized in the industry, and we think we're one of the first to try and do some of these things itself. So that's another piece that's it. The third is we've created a gig sourcing platform, and the purpose behind the gig sourcing platform that we launched about a year ago initially was primarily for a lot of the work that we do in the tech side, which leverages the crowd. But we think that is again a foundational block for how the future of this industry is likely to evolve. So in the future, if you've broken the process into atomic level tasks, not every task needs to be done by a full-time employee. Maybe you can source somebody in the crowd to get that piece of work done. But we think it's a foundational block to building the future of work itself. So a lot of these elements we're trying to intersperse to ensure that we can be ready internally, but also be ready with alternative solutions to customers depending upon their risk appetite and their readiness to embrace what's coming down the pike.
Absolutely. I think from BPOs changing to BPOs dying to BPOs kind of become exciting is where I think we are. I would believe that it's exciting. But Sudha and Ritesh, thank you so much for joining. This was a wonderful conversation, and all the best with your Run BPO strategy.
Thank you, Namrata.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Namratha. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.